In August of 2014, the legendary horror game Five Nights at Freddy's releases and immediately takes the internet by storm. But then, the game's developer Scott Cawthon releases a sequel in just 1 month. At first glance, it looks like a straight upgrade to the original, with new animatronics and new features. But under the surface lays a theme that few players discovered and even fewer talked about. I'm Nisse, and together we're exploring what Five Nights at Freddy's 2 says about mental health. Mwah. Welcome home. The Puppet. The Puppet is one of FNAF 2's new animatronics, who, much like Foxy in the first game, insta-game overs you unless you keep winding the Puppet's music box throughout the night shift. The Puppet also appears in the between-night cutscenes, floating uncomfortably close to the eyes of the animatronic you're seeing out of. Among these dreamlike cutscenes, the other animatronics start looking at you too. To me, the Puppet and these short dreams symbolize being an outsider, like when you're being social with other people, but feeling that creeping feeling of the others silently judging you. One of FNAF 2's secret minigames reveals that the Puppet is possessed by the soul of a child who was locked outside a party at the pizza restaurant, and who was because of this caught by the series' bad guy and killed. Now that the child controls the Puppet's social group is the other possessed animatronics, who are also similarly possessed by the ghosts of dead children. As such, you as the player are alive, and therefore you don't belong in their group. The Puppet was shut out from the party, and so now it's shutting you out from its party, whether intentionally or not. This illustrates one way that people who have connected over shared trauma can end up bullying others, believing that others haven't experienced what I have, so they couldn't possibly understand. This is, of course, false, as people can use their imagination to live into a traumatic experience and empathize with whoever it happened to. Further, this behavior is counterproductive, as it very possibly could turn away people who could come to understand your situation. It's why meeting coldness with coldness rarely helps. At some point, all of us have probably experienced rejection in some form. We can all live into the experience of being the child that wasn't invited to the party. This theme of isolation fits really well with the mask. The mask is the first thing that players tend to notice about FNAF 2, along with a lack of electronically controlled doors like FNAF 1 has. Instead, in FNAF 2 you're given a Freddy mask to put on when the animatronics wander into your office, which tricks them into thinking you are just another animatronic, which lets them leave. When you put on the mask and watch the animatronics leave in front of you, it's very easy to get self-conscious and feel a little judged, like you showed up at somebody else's party and the others are just barely allowing you to fit in, leaving you alone but almost to be nice. The mask, archetypically speaking, is the symbol of a borrowed identity, whether a specific identity or just an anonymous one. And in FNAF 2, for a moment, you can put on the mask and join the party. You know when you were a kid and you imagined that your blanket was an everything-proof shield against monsters? That's kinda what the mask feels like to me. You can't really be sure that it's actually protecting you, but the mask feels like protection. Interestingly, just like the monsters that we imagine, which are then inside our head, we hide our head inside the head of the monster. Something about that is just kinda cool. I don't know, I like it. Speaking of monsters, Mangle. Mangle is one of the new animatronics, and she's like a sexy version of Foxy, which, listen, don't tell anybody I said that. The flashlight. The flashlight also feels like something childlike in its logic. When you flash Foxy and Mangle with it, with the flashlight, I mean, it resets their logic and keeps them at bay. Very similar to the magical blanket. I'm mentioning this because the animatronics sometimes break the rules. Bonnie in FNAF 1 has a preference for hanging out in the back room, and if you check this room frequently when Bonnie is in it, she can eventually give you this screen, where she's staring directly into the camera, like she's noticed the red light on the camera and knows that you're watching. Much like this, FNAF 1 also has a secret fifth animatronic, the Golden Freddy suit, which only appear under Easter egg-like circumstances. FNAF 2 has its own version of this with a shadow version of Bonnie, who can randomly appear in your office, which doesn't lead to a jump scare, but instead the game just freezing and closing. It's the peppering of small touches like this that really makes FNAF as a series stand out to me. The little touches of dark lore, the subtextual messages and themes, figuring out the behavior and personality of each animatronic, the occasional spanner in the works with these little secrets, it all comes together to create something far more than what the game at first glance might look like. FNAF 2 is a solid game, despite a few design hiccups that were probably the result of it being put out in just a month. After you've seen the footage that I've used here today, what does FNAF 2 say to you? If FNAF 1's theme was nightmare, then FNAF 2's theme to me is loneliness. The feeling of going to bed alone as a child with only a blanket and a flashlight to protect you. But the theme of the game that would come next is something I would describe as fear. Not the kind of fear in a nightmare, or the kind we might have felt as kids, but more likely the kind of fear that is common in modern day society. Like and comment to help the video in the algorithm. Subscribe for more and click here for part 3. Shout out to all the wonderful gangsters in my grocery gang. Forge, mwah, Awan, mwah, Harry, Pumba, Zach, Omger, Egg, Nathan, and Revolution Bruce. Thanks for watching. Mwah.